This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, or whatever time zone you're in. It's 1 o'clock here for us, so good afternoon, everyone. So as Michael said, my name is Rich Kenny, and I am one of the owners of Tech Solutions. We're in Wilmington, Delaware. To give you a little bit of background, before the MSP got started, I was the IT guy for one of the law firms downtown. And that's kind of how I got into the whole vertical, is because lawyers talk a lot, and Delaware is full of lawyers. Some of you may know that, Elon Musk just backed out of the whole, or agreed to buy Twitter, so he backed out of the whole trial thing. But the trial is going to happen here in Delaware because our Chancery Court is known to be friendly to corporations, basically. I don't think Elon stood a chance at winning that court case, which is, I think, why he went through and went ahead with the Twitter purchase. But one of my clients was representing Twitter, so like that's kind of like it's very incestuous might be the wrong word, but they talk a lot. They're all the lawyers, they're all together, they all do, they talk at court and whatnot. And anyway, if you get in well and good with a couple key attorneys, it could really show benefits to you in the end. But what I'm here to do for you today is just basically go through my thoughts on, as a marketing person or as a salesperson who is either working with existing clients that are law firms, or trying to recruit or get new law firms as clients, or marketing towards the law firms. What do you need to know? And let me just, you guys can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this presentation sort of dates back a ways since the last time I talked about this, but when I talked about it, it was only with the STP group, just the owner group, and not the more expansive group that you guys represent. So I made a couple slight changes to it, not many, but I wanted to just go through a couple things and also share some current knowledge that I have, or that I've gained, especially since the pandemic. It used to be back in the day that working remotely was sort of what lawyers did, on a Saturday or something like that. And, everybody wanted the remote work or the remote capabilities, but no one was really using it, all the time. But since the pandemic, they certainly are. So that sort of changed a little bit as far as what their pain points are. But anyway, so this first slide basically says that the majority of lawyers out there do not trust IT vendors. Many lawyers look at our industry as an expense as opposed to being a business partner. So that's kind of the first thing you need to get across is, we're your business partner. We're here to protect your data. We're here to make sure that we do everything in our power so that you don't get compromised, etc. So you have to get over that. You have to work towards getting over the fact that they don't trust IT people. And maybe some of the newer, younger attorneys, they certainly have a different outlook on how things work. But the older, steadfast, the managing partner of a 40-person law firm or something like that, they, in general, just don't have a good opinion of MSPs. So this slide basically just says, what do they want? They want efficiency. So they want to be able to work on their documents and not have to struggle with it. They're not IT people. They don't understand technology as well as we do. This dates back to 2018, by the way, these stats. But working remotely is now a requirement as opposed to a benefit. And they all want easy integration, easy stuff. Like they don't want to have to think when they are sending a brief to co-counsel. They don't want to have to think about it. They just want to be able to send the brief to co-counsel. That's, so you got to make things easy for them to use, basically. So their biggest fears. If I'm a lawyer at one of these law firms, one of my biggest fears is, I'm going to add it here, is no email. Like that is my biggest fear as a lawyer, no email. So as soon as they're in the 365 world, I mean, you're probably pretty good as far as what you can do to make sure that their email is available to them. And 99% of all the law firms out there are already using 365, so that should not be a big deal. But not being able to work when they need to work is like, you'd think the world is coming to an end. So they have promised co-counsel or even opposing counsel a brief by midnight tonight or whatever. And then they eat a quick bite for dinner, they come back to their office or they come back to their home office, whatever it is, and they can't, for whatever reason, technology-wise, for whatever reason, they can't finish the brief. They can't pull it up, they can't, whatever it is that they can't do. You would think that the world is coming to an end at that point. So you need to have, your on-call procedures as an MSP. You need to have your on-call procedures pretty much buttoned up, and everybody needs to know what to do, how to do it, respond quickly. All of those on-call type of things really apply to lawyers, because basically when they can't work, it's an emergency. Doesn't matter what time of day or night it is. So prevents either. Okay, so one of the things that you need to get across to them, whether they know it or not. Some attorneys and law firms are very, very well aware that security and compliance is a huge thing, and they need to do what they have to make their environment as secure as possible. Some of them do realize that. Others do not. They look at it when I come to them, or when my account managers come to them and say, what we're looking to do is beef up your security posture a little bit by, implementing, this new security technology, whatever it might be, whether it's SOC and SIM or, whatever it is that you're currently offering that you didn't used to offer with regard to security. Sometimes when you go to these lawyers and to these to the law firms in particular, whoever your point of contact is, they look at that as you trying to nickel and dime them to pay you more money. And so what the trick is to make sure that they understand that you are simply following industry standards. You obviously have your best practices and your alignment spreadsheets and so forth to make sure that they are doing what they need to do to protect their data. But you have to get it very clear in their heads that it's really not even an option, because what happens is if they get compromised, the data that they have is very, 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 very sensitive. Doesn't even matter what kind of attorney you are. Maybe criminal. We don't really work with criminal attorneys that much, but if it's a Morgan and Morgan, like personal injury or medical malpractice type of a firm, then they're dealing with all sorts of HIPAA requirements and compliance requirements for HIPAA. If it's a litigation firm, I can guarantee you that their primary clients don't want this biggest, the Twitter case. I can guarantee you that everybody would be very, very upset if the data for the Twitter trial got leaked and, so forth and so on. So they just have to understand that it's not at all a option, and you're doing it for their best, for their, for their good, and not just to make another couple bucks off of them. That's kind of the point that they need to get across.
Can I ask you a question, Rich? So besides the HIPAA example, what other areas do law firms have to be compliant in?
Well, many of our law firm clients take credit cards.
Yeah.
So that's PCI compliance.
Yep.
What we've seen most from our corporate litigation, estates and trusts, estates and trusts, is what we've seen is that they're big clients. So, like, all right, let's call it MBSU is one of our law firms that we deal with. They're about 25 people right now, 30 people, something like that. And anyway, they focus primarily on estates and trusts. And so they're dealing with the banks. They're dealing with PNC Bank. I don't know, that's a local bank around here, but they're nationwide. So I don't know if you've heard of them or not. But PNC comes to them each year and says, you need, as one of our vendors, PNC says this, as one of our vendors, you need to be compliant to all of these things. And it's basically just a NIST compliance framework spreadsheet that says you need to do all of these things in order to be compliant to be our vendor. And so basically what I'm saying is they're going to lose one of their biggest clients or several of their biggest clients if they don't do these things. And so that propels them to say, yes, we need to do those things and we will get it done, and so forth. So in the case of estates and trusts, I mean, they've got all sorts of sensitive information. They've got everything from social security numbers all the way to bank account numbers and 401k accounts and whatever else that they deal with estates and trusts. And I mean, it's huge sensitive information.
I mean, I have a dim recollection, as I used to work with law firms. Isn't there something around electronic discovery, retention of records too, that they have a huge requirement to keep discoverable facts for like?
I think it's 7 years. And they need to keep, like, if a case closes, if they settle, whatever it is, if a case closes, they need to keep everything about that case, accessible and retain it for 7 years.
For 7 years.
Now, some of the law firms that we work for treat that word 7 years as infinite. So like they go back to the 70s with their data. Others tend to literally delete data after the retention period is over. And so that's not my decision. That is their decision. And I just, whatever they want, that's what we try to facilitate.
Can I ask you one last question before I let you get back on track there? And those vendor risk management programs, have you seen them increasing occasion of them, like in the current years compared to past years? Like, is this a relatively recent phenomenon that the Fortune 1000 are forcing their security requirements on their suppliers?
Let me address your comment one at a time. Has it increased over recent years? Most definitely, like 500,000% it has increased. We basically get some sort of compliance questionnaire or something that we have to help them fill out every, at least once a week at minimum, from across our clients. And a lot of it is vendor relations as opposed to like PCI compliance, or, I mean, a lot of it, of course, is the cyber liability insurance questionnaires, but it's also the vendors, and they're forcing, the big companies are forcing their vendors to be security aware and secure and improve their security posture. Huge. Okay. So with lawyers in particular, one of the first things that you need to know is that they have a need to keep their documents organized, all of their documents, their pleadings, their memos, everything, their filings, everything that they create using Microsoft Word or whatever, or PDF. All of that stuff needs to be maintained in an organized fashion. And so that requires document management. And there's tons and tons and tons of solutions out there that fit this category. But if you are involved with cloud computing at all, the answer is likely going to be iManage. If you're talking about what the a good sized firm uses, I'm referring to. And if you're more on-prem and maybe a smaller law firm, definitely under 50 people. But WorldDocs is also a solution. Now, WorldDocs has a cloud SaaS solution, but I don't know anybody who uses it yet, so I can't comment on how good it is. Our WorldDocs clients are all on-prem, and so that affects how their remote access solution is set up. But iManage is like, it's very SaaS friendly now. It didn't used to be, but it is now. It's very SaaS friendly. You pay per user, I think it's per month. And all the data, like your Word docs and all that, all your data is stored in iManage's private cloud. It's very, very recommended that you at least investigate iManage if you're looking to implement document management. I mean, that's pretty much what all that we go with now. Like if I had a group of 15, it's a department, it's an entire department in a bigger firm, like a big, like nationwide type firm. And they are that whole department is breaking off and starting their own firm. And they haven't told their existing firm yet, but they want to get all their ducks in a row, get all the proposals signed and all that stuff before they tell their firm. At any rate, I'm not even considering WorldDocs because I'm just going straight to the iManage cloud for their document management. And so anyway, that's kind of what you need to know. So basically, if you want a definition of document management in a nutshell, it takes over the file open and file save functions within your products, Acrobat, Office, all that stuff. So in Word, you're typing a brief, you want to save it, you do file save, and then up pops the document management interface where you get to do all sorts of things, categorizing, type of document it is, the author, a big long title for the document, and all of which, after you click save, is searchable, right? It's searchable for all those different fields. It's called a profile. All the profile fields are searchable, so you can pull up all briefs that were written by a particular partner or something like that. Oh, that's another thing. I just said the word partner. Do your research ahead of time and figure out if that law firm that is your prospect. Do the research ahead of time and figure out if they call their partners partner or director. There might be some other term, but normally it's either partner or director. It could be shareholder. I've seen some law firms where they call them shareholders, but all right, that was just a little aside, sorry. So I'm going to go into this in one at a time, these tabs. So I'm not going to sit here on this screen, but just common jargon that you should know if you're going to be selling to or marketing to a law firm. But before we go there, first thing I want to do is say SaaS or on-prem. So SaaS obviously is very, very friendly and it's common and all this stuff. And the landscape of what is out there has changed in the past 5 years to be really cloud friendly, but there's still a lot of things that are not cloud friendly, and they require either an Azure server or a local server, whatever the infrastructure requires. But you're going to find that the older generation attorneys, they don't trust the cloud. They think that if they can't put their hands on their data, then it's in trouble. And to be honest with you, many of those old folks don't even realize that their email is already in the cloud. Like that it just goes right past them. They want their document management to be on a server that's in their IT room, you know, in their server room, in their office. That's what they want. Whereas the younger generation, the progressive lawyers, et cetera, they're all about cloud because they realize that if you do, you know, some sort of SaaS application, then you can just use your laptop. You know, as long as I have a laptop, I can work from wherever I am. They realize that and all that. So it's basically, you got to kind of figure out where they are on that spectrum, I guess. So practice management is sort of like the general term to describe something that allows the law firm, it's line of business software dedicated to law firms, practice management software. And there's plenty of opportunities out there now to go SaaS with that. It's just a matter of what are their needs, what is going to accomplish their goals the best. So if you just do a Google search, like one of the first things that pop up is going to be Clio. So Clio is very popular now. And Clio integrates with QuickBooks from an accounting perspective and all this kind of stuff. So you want to look for, to make sure whatever practice management suite you pick, you want to make sure that they have some sort of integration into their accounting system.
Hey, Rich, can I ask you a question? So do the bigger law firms use something other than what's here, or is this typical regardless of the size of firms on practice management software?
I would say that, well, let's go with this. So hold on. So first off, this link here, Lawyerist, just reviews of law practice management software. Mm-hmm. This is what it comes up as. And it's basically just, here's a review from 2022 of practice management software for lawyers. And I don't have experience with all of these, not even a little bit do I have experience with all of these. And my point here was, look how many there are. And it's just, this is just somebody's review, right? Yeah. And so it's definitely out there. I don't really have much experience with hardly any of these things.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah. And then the other link that I had there was a program called iTimekeep. iTimekeep is really, really, the lawyers who track their time and who bill hourly really want their time tracking to be easy. And that's what iTimekeep is. It's a very, very easy, intuitive way for them to track their time. But that's all it is a time tracking application. And so in the back end, it has to integrate with the time and billing package that you choose, or that the law firm chooses. And the time and billing package is going to be similar to our ConnectWise or our Autotask or whatever. So you're going to be generating invoices out of that, and several other things, conflict checks. So when a lawyer gets a new case in, especially litigation lawyers, they have to run a conflict check to make sure that any prior cases that they had in the past don't conflict with this particular case. At any rate, these are the programs, the practice management software solutions that integrate with iTimekeep. So I highly recommend iTimekeep because they love it. And but you have to then make sure that your time and billing package is one of these packages. And there are some on this list that are SaaS solutions, but most of them are on-prem solutions. So there's that. And then the only other thing I was going to say about lawyers, the different categories of lawyers that I want you to make sure you understand the jargon for is the litigation lawyers, the corporate litigation lawyers. They're going to be billing by the hour. That's how they make their money. They'll bill out at $4.50 an hour, $6.50 an hour, or whatever, and that's how they make their money. So iTimekeep is very, very important to those lawyers that make their money by billing by the hour. The people who don't bill by the hour are contingency lawyers, like personal injury or medical malpractice, where they don't get paid unless they win the case. And in those contingency lawyer categories, they don't care about their time. They get 33% of whatever the settlement is, and that's it. That's what they get. It doesn't matter if they worked 1 hour or 101 hours. They get 33% of the take, and that's how they operate. So if you go into a med mal or personal injury, Morgan and Morgan or Lundy Law or whatever, if you go into those guys and talking about time keep and how you can keep track of your time, they're going to be like, yeah, I don't care about keeping track of my time. So understand the type of lawyer that you're working with before you go in. Okay. What? Michael, did you have something to say?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right. So email, it's literally their number one pain point. If they don't have email, they freak out. Most of the law firms are going to want metadata removal, and they want it to be automatic. And so usually there is an Outlook plugin. The program that we use most often is called Metadata Assistant. It's made by a company called Payne Consulting, and they're out of Seattle actually. So any of you Seattle folks, they're right your next door neighbor. But anyway, as you're clicking send for an email that has an attachment, a Word attachment or whatever, the Metadata Assistant plugin pops up and says, oh, you have an attachment. We need to remove all the metadata. And then you click next, finish, whatever, and then it sends it out with no metadata on the, embedded in the Word doc. And so that's very important to them. Workshare is another example of metadata removal tool. Okay. Next is
Case management.
PI and MedMal. They require a case management software as opposed to or in addition to practice management. So case management is more specific towards statute of limitations and that kind of thing. Okay, yeah. So they need to keep track of all these dates that are coming up for their case. If you know anything about statute of limitations for a personal injury claim, if you get in a car accident tomorrow, it's very, very likely that whoever your attorney is for whatever injury you sustained, whoever your attorney is, they're not going to file a suit until 2 years from tomorrow, until 2024. And the reason is because that's the statute of limitations on how whatever. And they need to keep track of those dates. They can't file a case after 2 years. But they want to build up as much evidence and as much physical therapy bills and receipts and all that kind of stuff before they file claims. So that's why it's 2 years. Anyway, very, very important for PI and MedMal is case management. Time and billing should have had its own tab. Actually, I don't even know why I stuck it on this particular tab, but time and billing is huge. It's just, I've already explained it. It's their version of ConnectWise or Autotask or whatever, and it's how they do all their invoicing and conflicts checks and all that stuff. And tabs is a common one, but it is on-prem. And most of these are coming out with SaaS solutions, but they're not, what's the word I'm looking for? They're not ready for prime time, or they're just ready for prime time. The jury's still out type of thing. But tabs is an on-prem solution. It actually stands for time and billing software. That's how it got its name. Juris is another one for smaller firms. Elite is one for larger firms. But there's more than that out there. I mean, this list is pretty much time and billing software, and it's just the time and billing software that integrates with iTimekeep. So it's very important that you understand what time and billing software does and how important it is to their business. Those who are litigation attorneys, they're corporate attorneys. They represent corporations who are suing other corporations. That's litigation. Those people, they need e-discovery. They need an e-discovery vendor. Don't try to do this yourself. I mean, unless you have the expertise, just let the guys who already have the expertise do it. And everybody uses Relativity One now. Everybody uses it, and nobody doesn't use it. And it is a web app. Sorry, it is a hosted app that is hosted by an e-discovery vendor. We have 3 local to us, but they market themselves nationwide. But I'm sure that every city or every area has their own e-discovery vendors that are local. So it used to be back in the day, call it like the 80s and the 90s or something. Litigation lawyers would get boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes of paper, and they had to look through all those papers and figure out, try to find the smoking gun. Now, all of those boxes and boxes and boxes of paper are put in, are scanned in as TIFF images, and they are put into Relativity One, and that's how the litigation lawyers go through and look at all the documents now, is through a litigation app like Relativity. All right. Next is they need to be able to share files. So you need to have a solution. SharePoint and OneDrive have come miles since the last time I gave this presentation. It's a lot easier now to send stuff with SharePoint and OneDrive than it used to be, and it's more secure, and et cetera, et cetera. But you do indeed need to have a solution in place, or at least offered to all of your law firms, because they need to be able to share large files amongst other people. They can't email. You can't email a 500 meg file or whatever, right? So this is what we're talking about. They used to use thumb drives. They used to use CDs. Whatever. All of that's done. Now you just send them a link to a file and they get it. It's just you have to have that solution in the back of your head. Here's what we're using for sharing large files.
Can I ask a question, James? Are you on? See if he comes in. If he's not, what's the one you use?
Yeah, it's ShareSync. Yeah, we use ShareSync, and I mean, we've implemented a couple of law firms. We've actually gotten rid of we're actually able to get the on-prem servers off. And anytime we've talked about it, there's a little hesitation, and then what we do is we say, look, we'll trial it for a month. We'll trial it on 1 or 2 people, and if you guys like it, we'll talk about implementing it. And I've never ever had a client say like, no, we don't like it. Every time they try it, they love it, absolutely love it, and it's almost like the easiest sale there ever is. Yeah.
What's that solution?
ShareSync. Absolutely.
Oh, ShareSync.
You have it here. Yeah. ShareSync is like it's so easy.
ShareFile is not called ShareFile anymore. It's Citrix. It's made by Citrix, and it's called something different now. I just know it as ShareFile. It's Citrix. God darn it. I can't remember what it's called now. But anyway, it used to be Citrix ShareFile, and then they just rebranded. I can't remember what they rebranded as. But if that is a solution that is common, it's more expensive. It's like, it's Citrix, and they minimum of 5 users, $100 a month type of thing. But some people like the word Citrix, and so that's the solution they want to go with. But the point of this slide is you just need to know that they need to do it. And B, you need to have a solution to offer them if they need it.
Yeah.
So other little rando things. Equitrack is a program. It's not the only one that's out there. You got to understand, everything that I have up here that's like name brand, there's other alternatives as well. But Equitrack allows them to track their copies and their scans and their prints. And so if I copy, a 100-page document, I send my client a bill for, whatever, 5 cents a page. That just goes on their next invoice. So how is all that tracked? It's tracked with Equitrack or one of the other ones. eCopy, I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with. There's another one made by Canon called Unisoft, or Unisoft, I think. It starts with UNI. I think it's Unisoft. Anyway, there's another one made by Canon called Unisoft or whatever. It just helps you manage all your copiers and your multifunction devices. Maybe they have to put in a user password or a user code or whatever, or a client matter code. So that's very common. So you walk up to the copier, you're a staff member, you walk up to the copier to make a couple copies. You have to put in a client matter. And that's part Equitrack, part eCopy is what, and so client matter. So in the world of a law firm, they deal with their clients with client matters. So I could have, if I'm a law firm, I have one client that's named, PNC Bank. And then every time PNC comes to me and says, oh, I have something new for you, that's another matter. And so every client has a client number, client name and a client number. And then each matter underneath of that client has its own name and number as well. And so when you walk up to the copier, you put in, 10222, and that's PNC Bank, and then it's matter number 0001 or whatever, right? So that's kind of what that is. Another thing that they need the ability to do is compare docs. So they need to be able to take two Word documents side by side, run them through a program, and have it spit out what the differences are between those two documents. You can do that within Word as long as everyone's on the same page. You can use the redlining feature within Word, but everyone has to know that that's how it's being used. If you just get two random documents that are the same, but you don't even, you haven't been tracking changes or anything like that, and you just want to compare them, you have to use one of these third-party programs. Okay. Also, Acrobat. It's a good idea to come up with something that you can share with your people on, what are the main differences between Acrobat Standard and Acrobat Pro. And because you just need to know, like, you need to go buy subscriptions for however many people need Acrobat. I mean, if anybody's using Acrobat 2017 or before now, you need to get rid of it because it's end of life. And so everything's subscription now. So then you just need to know what is the difference between Standard and Pro, because not everybody needs Pro. So anyway, it'd be handy to have some sort of document like this where, you could just hand it to them. Like, it's not, you don't want to have to sit there and explain the same thing over and over and over again. So you just hand them a document. Bates numbering is important to a lot of the law firms that are out there. And that's where you take a bunch of TIFF images or a PDF that's got 500 pages, and you put a number at the bottom of each page so that and that's used in the relativity landscape. And that's really all I have.
Yeah.
I don't have much more to go over. I hope that was, Michael, what you were looking for.
So I think that, I'm going to ask you a couple questions unrelated to what you presented here directly, right? So, like, if you think about, like, how many, like you and I were talking earlier, you recently landed like two new law firm clients, right? Yeah. One was from referrals and one was that the Google searched you, right? If you think about from the Google search process to your discovery call, right? Like, what was the pain, or either one, Rich, what were the pain points that got them to you?
All right, well, the Google search one was that new law firm that I was talking about, the one where they're breaking off.
Yep.
And really, they just want somebody to handhold them through starting up a new office.
Yep.
And I don't even think they're shopping around. They found us, they called us, I responded, and they said, all right, we need you to help us get our office up and running. You know what we need, right? And I'm like, yep. So their pain point was that they just want to get their new office up and running as quickly as possible. And that's their pain point. They needed somebody that is capable of handling that.
Mm-hmm. And what about the one that was a referral?
So, referrals are your best. So they didn't shop around either. And they had pain points that were based on a shoddy, so their last IT vendor took them completely to Azure. And they're not using Windows Virtual Desktop, they're using Terminal Server. And it was a shoddy implementation of a Terminal Server, and they totally botched it. And so the efficiency of that firm went down because they botched the Terminal Server setup, and it doesn't work. There's a lot of things that go wrong on a daily basis, and they're tired of it, so they got us. So.
And if you had to be, like if you and I were advising everybody on the webinar here, like what would be the attention grabbing kind of pains that potential clients might have? What would be I can give you my short list, but I'm curious what your short list would be.
Just going back to my previous, law firm discovery calls and that kind of thing. It all has to do with, of course, if they get compromised, then that's one thing. But short of that, it all has to do with whatever they use on a daily basis working efficiently and properly. And I think that's the biggest piece. In my experience, it's not just lawyers, but specifically lawyers. If everything's working, they're fine. They just leave it alone. We're all good. We're all good if everything's working. And if it's not, they just want it to work. That was, I think, my first slide. They just want it to work. And if it doesn't work, they're going to find somebody who can make it work. And that's it. They don't really care all that much about money. Some of them do. Don't get me wrong. It's not like they're all one big, huge category. But, we just had a law firm leave us because we were trying to help them too much, and our prices were slowly but surely going up. And they're like, we can't, we're too money conscious. We can't keep using you. I'm like, oh, well, see you later, bye-bye. And so, so I'm not sitting here saying that all lawyers are not focused on money, but all in all, generally speaking, that's not their primary concern. They just want everything to work. Yeah. And if it doesn't work, they're going to find somebody who can make it work.
There's a person I work with on a direct coaching basis, not of this call, and they specialize in law firms too. And I would say like 70% of their new sales, and they're growing, 1 or 2 clients a month, all has to do with something about, I guess, in the broad category of moving to the cloud, right? Or becoming permanently remote, right? That seems to be what's been driving a lot of their business lately. And I think it falls in the same umbrella that you're bringing up, right? Which is, as you move to the cloud, if you don't implement it correctly, you're going to get huge inefficiencies based on the old way you used to do it, right?
You are exactly right there. And as a matter of fact, I support our local ALA, which I would highly recommend all of you do as well. There was a conference that they put on, and I was a sponsor or whatever. I had one of those little booth tables set up or whatever. Anyway, I first joined the local Delaware ALA in 2006. So that's how long I've been. So I pretty much know everybody. I've been through everybody. There's no new prospects really to speak of on a monthly basis. But they've sort of become friends over the years and all that kind of stuff. And we had a huge discussion during the social hour following the conference about where everybody is in terms of the working remotely, the pandemic, all that stuff. And I would say the majority of all the law firms that I talk to, and again, I'm speaking to legal administrators or office managers, if you will. That's who I'm speaking to. I'm not speaking to managing partners. But the majority of firms that I was talking to, they've all called in their staff. That would be secretarial staff, paralegals, admin staff. They've all called in their staff at a minimum of 3 days a week. A lot of them are 5 days a week back to the office. But the attorneys don't have any rules at all. And they can work wherever they want to work. It doesn't matter where they want to work as long as they work. And I would say that is the new norm now. The staff works in the office and the attorneys work wherever they want to work. And so you just have to understand that remote access is working remotely. You need to be able to come up with a solution where they can work from wherever they are, period.
I think so. So I think there's themes around that are important. I think the other question I would have with you is, is there any uniqueness in the way you would have a cybersecurity conversation with a lawyer that's different than any of your other clients?
Dumb it down, put it in simple terms that they can understand.
Yeah.
Don't use any sort of IT jargon. Just say, just dumb it down. That's my advice. And make it so that it's crystal clear that if they get compromised, they're screwed. Always use the word reputation when you talk about compromise. Always. For lawyers, reputation is everything. So always use the word reputation when you're talking about getting compromised.
And let me ask you, I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions and I'll throw it open to you. So the people that are affected by what I would call the vendor risk management stuff, is it always like Fortune 500 or Fortune 1000 companies imposing that on them, or are there other pressures from their customers that are forcing it on them? Is it all just bigness?
I have only seen those questionnaires and forms and spreadsheets and whatnot come from big organizations. So we have a lot of
Yeah.
bankruptcy firms here.
Yeah.
So American Express, you start naming them. American Express, JP Morgan, Deloitte, or not Deloitte & Touche, Deutsche Bank, PNC Bank. These are examples of who's been sending these questionnaires. And so, yeah, they're all the big companies here.
Okay. And I think I had one last question to you. So one thing we'd say is if you're trying to, pique the interest of somebody, one targeting thing might be going after law firms that have, work with Fortune 1000 companies or whatever. I think the other thing that strikes me too is you kind of presented a lot of material here, but to me, do law firms put a premium on people who work with other law firms? Is that higher?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I would think too. So do you mean
MSPs?
And yours is all just kind of natural reputation, right? Do you do a lot of like case studies or case examples or publicizing which law firms you work with?
Not really, no.
Yeah. So I think that's a takeaway for everybody is to have credibility in this market. You need to let people know that you're already doing work with other prestigious law firms or recognizable law firms.
That is that's like one of the first things I do in a discovery meeting is I start name dropping on who we already service. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, is Brianna still in?
Yeah.
Okay. Brianna, are you still in? Yeah. Can you
I'm here.
I know you guys do a lot of work with law firms too. Is there anything you would add to this stuff that Rich was talking about in terms of, of the law firms that you most recently kind of sold or engaged with? What are the things that are bringing them to you guys?
Here we go. So I would say one thing that Rich touched on right at the end was being a part of the ALA, your local ALA chapters. That's something that we do a lot of. And while you might not always, we've been a part of that group for so long at this point that piggybacking off of what Rich said, you start to know all the faces that are there. You start to know all of the businesses and the organizations that are a part of it. And while that doesn't necessarily always translate to just direct business, because, like I've said, we've been there for a long time. One thing to keep in mind is that those lawyers also talk to people that aren't associated with that group, right? Maybe they're a very social industry. So it makes sense for us to remain a part of that because it still continues to be a place for referrals for us. And people move around as well.
Yeah.
So there's that's another thing that we've noticed. I want to say it was one of our legal groups. We had a gal who was our point of contact at another company, and she went to another legal group and brought us in shortly thereafter, just because she knew what to expect with us. So that was another positive. So I think that for us, the ALA groups continue to be a great resource and just something you can participate in. We actually just did an event with the Puget Sound Association here. And so there's lots of opportunities to participate in that group. So I highly recommend if you're looking to start sourcing or start approaching lawyers, that as a good starting place.
Yeah, the other one I've heard of,
I 100% agree with Brianna, and she said it better than I did. Like, that's kind of how our ALA is. Like, everybody knows who I am. We're not getting any new clients from the people that I see at each meeting. But they move from firm to firm. So legal administrators go from firm to firm occasionally, and so that's a good way of getting into a new firm. And B, just the referrals that come from that. It's I don't want to say never ending, but it's pretty constant.
Can I ask you another question? Do you have any allies, Rich? Do you have any relationships with either document management or time management or some of the vendors that are predominantly selling to law firms? Are they helpful to you at all?
I've got allies more localized than that specifically for law firms. We don't sell copiers, but I'm in real tight with one of the main copier vendors around. Actually, most of the copier vendors around, I'm real tight with. And, every law firm, whether they think they need it or not, or what, every law firm is going to have a pretty good sized copier, and at least one, depending on how big they are. And we don't play in that market. So as soon as you get in good with a copier vendor, assuming that copier vendor doesn't do their own IT work as well, they're going to call you in as soon as they have a new client. That's one. And then also the phone. Like, we do phones, but we're also friendly with people around that only do phones and no IT. They only do phones. We're friendly with them as well. So those are my two big alliances when it comes to law firms, I would say.
And just to second what Rich said, the copier groups do continue to be good for us as well. And the big Print Northwest, which is like the big copier group here in the Seattle area, they are also a big partner with the ALA. So I've gotten a really good opportunity to just get closer with the folks there as well, just from being at events together.
So do you, in your SEO stuff and all that's in your Google ads, do you target lawyers specifically?
So we've played around with targeting by industry, but a lot of what we find is that some of the terms that would be bringing in the right types of people, some of them can just be a little bit, they're too infrequent to run. So like my Google Ads campaign will say like limited by search volume. So that's it's like playing the long tail. So we just turn that campaign off. But we will likely be.
But SEO, do you get like a law specific page on your website that you tag and everything?
Yeah. So we have we have an industry section where we have a page dedicated to all of those, and we optimize the lawyer group page, and that was what we were running the ad on. But like I said, it's just honing. I didn't do it for long enough to hone in on the exact keywords that are going to bring those folks in. But with law groups in particular, referrals continue to be the best source of leads. Yeah. So it just, because the referral stream continues to be so good, it's not as high of a priority to run Google ads on.
I agree. So. How about you, Rich? Do you do anything special from an SEO standpoint or anything on your page to attract lawyers?
No, not really. Yes. I agree with Brianna that usually if a law firm is after or seeking new IT vendor, I'm sure they'll do a Google search, but it's likely going to be a email out to their colleagues saying who does everybody use, and that's going to be how that guarantee. I
agree.
Most of our law firm clients have been, we've gotten them that way, not through a Google search. But I just, this 15-person law firm that's breaking off from their existing firm. And then I suppose I hope they're going to grow. That's the goal. So, and they got us through a Google search, but that's rare. That's rare.
I would say with the Google searches too, with like we've gotten law groups that come in from the terms that we regularly will use, right? So like the
Yeah,
legal groups aren't necessarily typing in, IT support for law firms
right.
specifically. A lot of the times they're just typing in what everybody else, like cloud migration project, like those types of terms that are already encompassed in
Yeah.
some of our other ads. So that works nicely.
It just seems to me from listening to you guys that this would be much more of like almost like surgical prospecting outreach, right? Which would be, here's law firms we know are doing business with big companies, right? Here's of a certain size, right? What's the biggest law firm you have, Rich? How many lawyers? Like, is there a sweet spot in terms of the number of employees or number of lawyers that you tend to work with?
For us, our ideal candidate is, a 30 to 40 person law firm.
Yeah, that's what I
I
would
think our
guess.
biggest law firm is probably GFM, or no, it's probably GFM, which is about 65 people.
I think Brianna might be larger, but what's your sweet spot? What's your range of clients you've been attracting?
For law firms, I do not know that number on the top of my head, but I would say that it's anywhere between I'm sure that we would take something as small as 30, but anywhere from like 30 to 50 is probably a
Yeah.
healthy size law firm. But I do think we service a couple
And,
that are slightly
and to be
larger.
honest, what I know of the law firm marketplace, that's probably the largest segment. I mean, 30 to 50 is much, there's many more law firms of that size than there are like 75 to 100, right?
Yeah,
So
it
it's
it is
significant.
a nice size range to be in
Yeah.
terms of the amount of opportunity.
Yes, and I think second thing is what I hear you guys saying is why the web presence is kind of important, probably in a, like we specialize in law firm sense, that the best kind of outreach is actually going directly after companies that are fit that size with some kind of case studies or stuff like that that says we know law firms and we know what your pain points are, right?
Well, and I know right now we have a big push, or at least I have a really big push where I'm trying to get more of that content, more of the type, like a case study kind of thing from law firms, because I do think that type of content is going to be more valuable to like the ALA and other groups that might not be
Yeah.
associated with someone using your services. So I do think that, yes, I think all of the things that Rich hit on as being things that lawyers are most concerned about are 100% correct. And so having something, quotes from another law firm that's local, talking about you, I think it goes a long way with this group in particular.
Yeah.
Hey, Michael, can you hear me? This is Ryan from San Antonio. Straight. Hey, so we have 3 law firms on the pipeline right now, and 2 of them we hired a managed one of our managed services engineers. So he goes on site, does projects. We hired him about 3-4 months ago, and he sat with me and told me that, hey, I used to be like the on-site guy for these law firms, and you guys have a much better product. And he actually set up the intros and gave us credibility with these law firms. And yeah, a lot of it was around the cloud solutions, Azure Virtual Desktop. We went in and actually did a demo, and they were really excited about like the ease and speed of it. So anyway, that was a kind of that was a out of nowhere kind of referral source, but it made me think I'm going to start talking to the rest of these guys that came from other MSPs. So
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think I actually like where we ended up with the conversation, which is, a lot of times when you think of marketing, you kind of direct default into like digital. And to me, like digital is just secondary in this marketplace. It's much more around surgical prospecting, getting referrals, doing really targeted kind of outreach on those pain points that Rich covered, including what Ryan talked about. And
I would
actually,
also second Michael on that. Also, just networking, like within this group, networking is just the best way. And they like to do those, after work events and those types of things in a lot of cases. So
they're probably more so than almost any. Accounting's kind of similar to some other ones, but like attorneys all know each other too. They all know who, if you mention somebody's name, and even if they're not in the same type of practice area, they'll probably know each other. It's funny, Rich, I never knew you used to work at a law firm, though. That makes more sense now that I heard your history there. Plus, you're in Delaware, right? The land of corporations.
Yeah.
I think And if anybody has any more questions, just bring them up now, or if not, I will make sure we publish this, and I'm gonna almost
Oh,
like
I have
summary of
one, I
some of
have
the
one more thing.
implications.
I have
Yeah.
one more thing. There's a, I have an alliance with a Comcast guy. So
Oh, I was gonna mention that too.
in our world downtown, Verizon, it's a long story and I'm not going to go through it, but literally speaking, Verizon is not allowed to bring their FiOS, business class FiOS into the buildings downtown. And so many of the smaller firms have Comcast coax as their internet source or internet, ISP. And so we've been having more and more, coax is just filled with its own problems usually. And so when they start finding pain through their coax connection because their internet connection is unreliable, unstable, whatever, we always direct them towards, and I have a really good relationship with one of the enterprise Comcast folks with Comcast Business, the enterprise
It's
division,
interesting.
where they bring in a fiber line. So they, like, basically if your coax bill each month as a law firm, if your coax bill is like, $200, $280 or $300 or whatever per month, replacing that with a symmetrical fiber line is about in the vicinity of $1,000 a month.
Mhm.
And to them, $700 a month is nothing. And so when you go with all of the pros and cons, like not many cons, but the pros of a fiber line, they usually bite and they usually take it because they want the reliability and all that kind of stuff. And so what I'm getting at, what I'm specifically getting at is I've got a really good relationship with this Comcast guy and we feed each other business all the time. And so that's another alliance that I have really taken advantage of. And he gave me 2 suite tickets, SUITE tickets to the Flyers game last night. So last night I was living in luxury at the Wells Fargo Stadium watching Wells Fargo Center watching the Flyers. So there you go.
Can I ask you 2 quick last questions before I let everybody go? Rich, do you have co-managed clients in law firms?
Yes, that is, I love that because that's really money for nothing, right?
And how about you, Brianna? You guys got co-managed?
Yes, we do have a few co-managed law firms.
Okay, cool. I think that's all I had actually. So what I'm going to do is publish this recording and then kind of pull out some of the ramifications. And then if anybody wants to work on their kind of law firm pursuit plan, let me know. And maybe we get together, a small group, I'll just work one-on-one with you. But I actually have found that law firms are a pretty good target these days because there's more of them than any other kind of professional firm. And then 2, as Rich said, they're willing to pay, in most cases, pretty premium prices. And I think if you put in the effort and can appear as a specialist and do the surgical prospecting and getting the introduction, it's a pretty good growth engine for you guys. The one thing Rich didn't say, and it kind of is not true, his 2 most recent opportunities, it's a difficult sales process sometimes because there's multiple influencers and you got the partner is different than the practice manager. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah. If not, we will.
It usually comes to a vote with the partnership.
Yeah. So there's usually another step or 2 in there, and it kind of, despite your 2 recent ones, Rich, tends to be a longer sales cycle, right?
I will also just add on that for the selling to legal groups that I tend to answer the phones first here. And so one thing I've noticed is that with law firms, it does seem like if they are unhappy with their IT provider, they're very fast to make the decision to start shopping for new ones. So keep that in mind. It can be a double-edged sword. So one thing that I think is most important with legal groups right at the beginning of a relationship is establishing yourself as a business partner. So instead of being just an IT vendor. So just keep that in mind, that they're usually, shopping around before. So that if you can figure out whatever that pain is, oftentimes in my experience, they're just very vocal about what it is that's annoying them. But definitely listen to that, because I think there's a lot of opportunity for making sure you get off on the right foot. And I think that law firms can be a very long-term relationship.
Yeah,
Where,
I think so.
one of our longest, I think one of our longest clients is our law firms. So just making sure you get off on the right foot is really important with them, because they will, too much pain in the beginning. I think there will be issues.
And I was going to say, the other thing, I've never heard more of a payback from any other association like I heard from the ALA. Like every single person that has substantial law firm clients tends to at least have a good relationships with the ALA.
Yep, and those are local to everyone's market. So
Yeah.
just I highly recommend going and finding whatever ALA group is in your market, and it's really easy to become a partner. And I'd say trial it for a year if you guys are looking to grow that lawyer relationship. And if you already have a law firm that's possibly a part of the association or that you're already servicing, I think that makes it that much easier going into that.
I actually learned something from both of you guys too, that the digital side is really just supportive. It's really not, it's not what creates the results, right? It just supports the understanding that you're specialist, right? So any reliance on like hashtagging or Google AdWords and all that is just not going to get you new clients.
No, but I will say that I know with the law groups in particular, if I recall correctly, when I first came in, Brian did mention there are certain tools and things that a lot of law firms use. So sometimes just adding those, like we have some of them on our law firm page, just adding those so that they see something that looks familiar. It's like, oh, you must work with other law firms. Even something that small can be beneficial as well.
So you have that language. Do you have some of that language, I assume, in your website too, like document?
I believe so. I know we did some updating.
You don't have to look now. We'll let everybody go. But no, it's fascinating. I actually like the way it ended. I think there's enough also pain points to get into now, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's the thing about kind of remote computing and moving to the cloud and all that seems to be happening frequently enough that if you target that in your messaging, you get a better shot at getting some meetings. All right, everybody. Well, thank you. I'm going to send you a recording. I'm going to summarize kind of quickly the result, the implications for people, and then if there's again, everybody wants to talk about how to do the marketing plan for law firms or get in a smaller group like this and talk through it, we'll give you that opportunity in the future.
All right.
Thank you, Rich. Good stuff.
Thanks again, Rich. I
Thanks,
should have
Michael.
said
Thanks,
Thanks,
Rich.
Brianna.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.